The wind howled like a restless spirit. Rain lashed against the glass windows of the small, dimly lit train station. A lone figure stood on the platform, clutching a tattered umbrella that did little to shield him from the storm. Daniel was a traveler on his way home after a tiring business trip. The station clock struck midnight, its chime echoing through the eerie silence. Daniel shivered, though not from the cold. Something about this place felt off. The station was nearly empty, except for a sleeping station master and a stray cat curled on a bench. As the rain intensified, the distant sound of a train whistle broke the quiet. Daniel turned his head toward the tracks. A bright light pierced through the darkness, growing larger and larger. The train was approaching. But this wasn't just any train. The train screeched to a halt, its arrival unusually quiet. It was an old locomotive, its once glorious exterior now covered in rust and grime. The doors slid open with a hiss, revealing a dimly lit interior. Curiosity and a sense of unease tugged at Daniel as he stepped inside. The train was almost empty, with only a handful of passengers seated in various compartments. Each one looked strange and silent, their faces pale and devoid of emotion. He found an empty seat near the window and settled in. The train jolted to life, lurching forward as the rain continued to pour outside. Daniel glanced around. The passengers avoided eye contact, their gazes fixed on nothing in particular. The conductor, a gaunt man with hollow eyes, appeared out of nowhere to check tickets. "Destination?" he asked in a low, almost mechanical voice. "Home," Daniel replied, handing over his ticket. The conductor stared at him for a moment longer than necessary, then punched the ticket and moved on without a word. As the train sped through the stormy night, Daniel began to notice odd things. The compartments seemed to stretch endlessly, far longer than they should. The scenery outside the window wasn't changing, just an endless expanse of darkness. A soft hum filled the air, growing louder until it became a faint whisper. At first, Daniel thought it was the wind, but the whispers soon grew distinct. They were voices, fragmented and incoherent, like distant echoes. He turned to the elderly woman sitting across from him. "Did you hear that?" he asked. She didn't respond. Her eyes remained fixed on her lap, where her hands clutched an old leather purse. Daniel's unease grew. He glanced at the other passengers. All of them sat unnaturally still, their faces eerily blank. Hours passed, or so it seemed. Daniel checked his watch, but the hands weren't moving. His phone had no signal, and its clock displayed an error message. The train never stopped at any stations. It just kept moving, speeding through an endless void. Desperate for answers, Daniel decided to explore the train. He walked through car after car, each one identical to the last. The passengers he passed were the same ones he'd seen earlier, seated in the same positions. It was as if he were caught in a loop. In one car, he found a child sitting alone, clutching a ragged teddy bear. The child looked up at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. "You shouldn't be here," the child whispered. "Why not? What's going on?" Daniel asked, his voice trembling. The child didn't answer. Instead, the train jolted violently, throwing Daniel off balance. The lights flickered, and the whispers returned louder this time. As Daniel regained his footing, he noticed something new. A dark figure stood at the far end of the car, its form indistinct and shrouded in shadows. The figure began to move toward him, slow and deliberate. Panic surged through Daniel as he stumbled backward. The other passengers remained oblivious, their eyes staring blankly ahead. "Who are you? What do you want?" Daniel shouted, his voice echoing in the empty car. The figure stopped, tilting its head as if studying him. Then, in a voice that was both deep and hollow, it said, "You boarded the wrong train." Daniel's mind raced. What did that mean? The whispers grew deafening, filling his ears with unintelligible words. The lights flickered again, and when they stabilized, the shadow figure was gone. He ran through the train, desperate to find a way out. But every door he tried was locked, and every car looked the same. Finally, he stumbled into a compartment that was different from the others. The walls were covered in old photographs and faded newspaper clippings. Each one depicted train accidents, all with the same headline, "The Midnight Train Tragedy, No Survivors." Daniel's heart sank. In one of the photos, he recognized himself, standing on the platform of the station where he had boarded. The realization hit him like a freight train. This wasn't just any train. It was a vessel for lost souls, a never-ending journey for those who had unknowingly crossed into the realm of the dead. The shadow figure reappeared, this time standing inches away from Daniel. Its hollow eyes bored into his soul. "Why am I here?" Daniel demanded, his voice cracking. "You chose this path," the figure replied. "This train is for those who refuse to let go, those trapped by their regrets." Daniel thought back to his life. The arguments he had, the chances he missed, the guilt he carried. Was this his punishment? No. He shouted. "I don't belong here." The figure leaned closer, its voice a chilling whisper. "Then prove it." Daniel closed his eyes, focusing on the life he had left behind. He thought of his family, his friends, and the things he still wanted to do. The whispers grew fainter, and the train began to shake violently. The shadow figure dissolved into darkness, and the train's walls started to crumble. When Daniel opened his eyes, he was back on the platform of the small station. The rain had stopped, and the station master was awake, staring at him with a puzzled expression. "You okay, sir? You've been standing there for hours," the station master said. Daniel nodded slowly, his heart pounding. The train was gone, and so were the eerie passengers. As Daniel walked away from the station, he felt a strange sense of relief. He didn't know what had happened, but he knew one thing for certain: he had been given another chance. Behind him, the faint whistle of a train echoed through the night, but he didn't turn back. Some journeys are better left unfinished.